Hello friends, welcome to Coding Garden with CJ. Welcome to Newb Quest Authorization. This is going to be part 5, I believe. So we've done several episodes over the past few Saturdays and Sundays. Today pretty much should be the last episode where we kind of like bring it all together. And I welcome Tony. Say hello, Tony.
Hello, hello, hello.
And please let us know, how are our levels? Am I too loud? Is Tony too loud? Let's say the alphabet together, alternating. Tony, are you ready?
Okay, am I starting or?
I'll start. A,
B,
C,
D,
E,
F,
G,
H,
I.
A.
Okay, so let us know if either of us needs to be a little bit louder. Hello, Alka and Oliver. Welcome to the stream. Hello, Carmen, who's my father, who seems to be tuning in. And Borislav, welcome. It's going to be a fun time. So let's go ahead and review what we've done so far. I feel like if you're watching these videos back to back, like you're getting a repeat of the review every time, but that's okay. It's good to review what we've done. So I'm going to start up the server, the client, and I'll start up the server locally. Also, if you want to check out this code, the link to GitHub is in the link in the description below. And I will be pushing up my code as we write code today. Alka says, it sounds like I'm hanging out in a large tiled room, but the level's fine. Yeah, I cannot seem to find a good spot in this building to stream. This is the least amount of noise, because like every other room sounds like you can hear the air conditioning. But yeah, it's really high ceilings in this room. Okay, and so we should be able to check out localhost 8080. Here we go. So this is the site that we're building. Basically, we allow users to sign up. So you can go to the sign up page. Tony, let's create a new user.
I think we have to keep doing this because we forget our other usernames.
Well, I think I remember like Newb 4, but regardless, we're going to demo what this thing can do.
All right, we're going to do, okay. Do I have control?
Yes, you have. Oh, wait, no, you don't. Let me give you control. There you go.
All right, we're going to call this one Final Newb.
The final Newb.
Camel case. And standard password is passwords are cool.
Okay, so when we click this button, we actually create a user on the server, and then it redirects to their dashboard, and now that user is actually logged in. Now they can't do anything, and that's what we're going to do in this episode. We're going to allow the user to do something, and then basically make it so that whatever that user does, only they can see and other users can't see. But after we've created a user, you can also log out and then log back in. So just log in as that user you just created. Cool, and then logging in takes you to the dashboard as well. So this is what we've got so far. We have a client and a server. Let's take a look at the code. So the client is with Vue.js, the server is with Express, and we're using a MongoDB. But today, the first thing we're going to do is build another middleware for the backend. So what we've done right now is we built this check token set user middleware, which basically looks at the authorization header of the incoming request and grabs the JSON web token that's inside of it. Here, let me pull up Postman, because we can see kind of what we're doing with Vue.js, but we can see what actual type of request is being made. So let's see. Oh, well, there's that user's password. But basically, when you're logging in, you're making a post request with your information, and that's going to give you back a token. So this should give us back a token. And then if you want to make an authenticated request, you include that token in the header. So if you just request the slash route of our server, you get back a hello world message. However, if you include a valid authorization token like this, that middleware we wrote actually parses this token, gets the user information out, and then puts that in the response. So the fact that we're seeing this user information means we're actually sending that token to the server, and that middleware we wrote is taking that information and getting the user information out of this token. So that's great. But today we want to write a new middleware that basically make sure a user is logged in. So instead of just checking the header, basically we're going to make sure that there is rec.user, and if it is set, we're going to allow them to access those routes that we build. But if it's not set, we're going to send back a 401 unauthorized, you're not allowed to see this message. So as a quick review, we can see the middleware that we wrote last time. It's called check token set user. So this is an Express middleware. This line of code right here is what we use to grab the authorization header. So when you're making a request, this is the authorization header, and this line of code pulls that out. Once we have the header, we grab the token from it, and then we use the JSON web token library to actually verify it using our token secret. If it's valid, we get a user out of it and put it on the request, and then just go on to the next middleware or the next route that's being requested. And if we look at our main file, we're using that middleware right here. So in the last episode, we kind of reviewed like what is middleware in Express and talked about how every request coming into our backend app has to go through all of these middlewares, including the one that we just wrote. So every request that comes into our app, we're essentially checking to see if it has a authorization header, and if it does, we're setting rec.user so that we can use it. Cool. Oh, hey, Amy. Amy says, my hair looks very crisp. Yes, I shaved the sides of my head this morning. Yes, and M is saying, hello, first time viewing live, welcome. And could you explain what bearer means in the token? So this bearer right here is really just a convention. If you've ever interacted, I think with the Twitter API, it actually uses a bearer token in it. But the idea is you have the word bearer, and then after that is the actual token value, but really this is just a convention. Actually, let's just search the web for it real quick. Bearer token. Yeah, it's a thing in OAuth 2. Bearer tokens are the predominant type of access tokens used with OAuth 2. A bearer token is an opaque string not intended to have any meaning to clients using it. So it's a convention. Honestly, because we wrote this middleware ourselves, we could even not put bearer on there and it would still work because we'd be able to get the value off of it, but just following the convention that you see in a lot of other authorized APIs. Tony.
Yes.
Do you remember us writing this?
Yeah, I'll be honest, like this kind of went over my head, like the idea of middlewares.
So you think we should, let's do this. So before we write another middleware, let's review what is middleware.
Basic understanding.
Yeah. So give me, what is your definition of a middleware?
It's basically some sort of code that kind of runs in the middle of our larger set of code or instructions.
I like that. It's pretty general. Because like the concept of middleware itself is like all over programming. It's not just in Express. But here's the way to think about it. So we have this Express app here, and typically when you're writing an Express app, this is how you do it. So you bring in the Express library, you create an app, and then typically you might bring in other libraries where you say something like app.use. If you ever say app.use, you're using a middleware that somebody else wrote. So Volleyball is a middleware that does logging. So it logs like incoming requests in the outgoing response. And it says like, what is the body type of the incoming request? What's the method? So this middleware has access to every single request coming into our server, and it logs that information to the console. So some middlewares are nice and just log requests. This cores middleware adds a header to the outgoing response. It adds the access control allow origin header, but its job is to set that header. This middleware parses incoming requests that have a body that are JSON. It parses them as JSON. So like when I guess the post route we have is for logging in and signing up. And whenever we're sending our data, so like this post request is sending this data to the server. The way the server is actually able to interpret what we're sending to it is because of this middleware right here. It looks at an incoming request and actually parses it. And Simjohn just pledged via Patreon. Thank you so much, Simjohn. If you're watching live, hello. And make sure you can get into the Discord and all that. If not, send me a message, but welcome. Glad to have you. So that parses the body, and then it comes our middleware. And so when you're writing your own middleware, you have access to the request, the response, and this next thing. So the request is the incoming request. That's what the client is sending to the server. The response is what you're going to be sending back to the client that made the request. And this next function allows you to either go on to the next middleware or to halt the process and like forward an error or something like that. So basically what we've done here, you can see there are multiple times that we call next. And in the case of our middleware, we just called next when we're done doing what we're doing or we can't do something. So basically we say, okay, do they have a header? And if they do, we're going to try to parse it here. If they don't, just go on to the next middleware. If they do have a header and it has a token, we'll do something. But if there is no token, just go on to the next middleware. And then if there is a token, let's try to validate it. And then after validating it, go on to the next middleware. And what we mean by next is you can think of these things as like top-down, one after another. And when we call next, it's going to go on to the next one. The other thing is just your basic route handlers in Express can even be considered middlewares, but they're just more specific. So with these, you see app.use. That means for any incoming request, that middleware is going to get hit. But this says, okay, if the incoming request has a method that's get and the path is slash, this middleware is going to get hit. And if you ever send back a response, then it doesn't go to any of the middleware below it. I feel like I'm talking a lot. I'm saying a lot of things. But let's just see like a basic example. So like we could write a middleware right here. Tony, let's write a basic middleware. So do app.use right there.
Okay, app.use.
And then create an arrow function. And the arrow function is going to have 3 parameters, rec, res, and next. So parentheses first. And inside of there, rec, comma, res, comma, next. Then give your nice little fat arrow and a function body.
Oh,
sorry. Curly braces. Hey, Ashwak, welcome to the stream.
Quick, like, kind of comment. Like what we were seeing like last time is like if we don't have this next function, it just kind of sits in this middleware indefinitely. Right?
Exactly, yeah. And so that's the point of next. It's like if you don't call next, Express doesn't know that it needs to go on to the next thing. And so we can demonstrate that really quick. So like right here, let's just do a console log that says this middleware is running.
Nope, CJ syntax.
Yeah, single quotes.
Is running.
Okay. And so we're logging this to the console. So when a request comes into our Express app, we should see that logged here. But because we're not calling next, whoever made that request, it's just going to be spinning. We're never sending back a response or going on to the next thing. So for instance, if I try to make the request here, now, let's close that. We're going to see it spin. So we make the request. This middleware is running, and it just says loading, right? Eventually, this is going to time out because we never send back a response, and we never go on to the next middleware if there is one. So that's the point of next. But the idea of like res.json or res.send is basically like you're cutting it off. It's like if you ever do, let's do it right here, res.json, and we'll just send back message. Let's take a quick stretch. This is all you will ever see. Okay, so now our middleware is actually, it's like sending back a response, but because of the placement, right? So our middlewares are here, then our route is here, and then our auth routes is here. Because this is here, and it's a use, which means it's gonna run for every single incoming request, and we send something back, that means literally you could never reach any of these other middlewares. So let's send the request, and we should get back, this is all you'll ever see. And we did see the middleware is running. But that's not what we want with the middleware. Like typically, we want to modify the request or the response in some way. So what we might actually do is say something like rec.isCool is true, and then call next. And by calling next, it goes on to the next middleware, but we set like some custom property, and now any other request handler or middleware after this has access to this isCool property. Okay, so now that I'm calling next, it shouldn't hang. I should go on to the thing that I'm actually requesting. Let's see that. Go. Okay, so we actually get that back. But the point is, now that I've put some property on here, we actually can access that in any other middleware below that. So Tony, how do you think I can log the value of isCool right there?
We're gonna be, let's see, where are we trying to log it to?
Just to the console right there on line 28.
Console.log is cool.
Are you sure about that?
Do we need to do?
So notice like what am I putting isCool on? Or like what am I attaching it to?
You're attaching it to a request.
Right. So if I want to access it here, I have to use request also.
Okay, so we're doing
no inside the console log.
Inside console log rec dot isCool.
Yes. And so that's the other thing to mention. So like each of these middlewares has access to rec, res, and next, but it's the exact same one for every single one. So when we get down here, we still have access to isCool, which is set up there. So when that route runs, we should see true log to the console.
And so like
it's a little delayed, but yes. So this middleware is running, then we see true, and then we get back the response.
And so, like, in this instance, we're just literally logging isCool, like, no matter what. Otherwise, we would say, like, only log it if it's true.
Yeah, and then you could have some custom logic that only set isCool if some other thing was set. Exactly. So that's, like, basic middleware theory and, like, how it works. But what we did was we used middleware to set rec.user. And that's essentially what we're going to use today. Because, so I'm going to get rid of this. It's just as an example, but if you look at our middleware last time, if we were able to verify the token, we set rec.user. So that means if the user is sending us a valid token in the header, every single request handler after this has access to rec.user.
I think we should do maybe like a whole episode on the concept of middleware.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you can never learn too much because there's a lot of cool middleware packages out there too that like do cool things, and you could write your own middleware. And Jiraj is asking, will res.end in app.use work? I think it will, because by doing that, it immediately ends the response. Let's just try that. So let me put it back what I had. So instead of calling next, oh, and one thing I didn't mention, I think we should talk about this too, is if you pass a parameter into next, instead of going on to the next one, it goes to the error handler. And so in login and signup, we actually use that to send errors, like if there was invalid login information or not validated signup information. But yeah, let's try what Jiraj is mentioning. If we do res.end right here, see what happens. Go. Yeah. So even calling res.end just immediately quits, and it doesn't even send anything back to the client that made the request. Yeah? Okay. And then like another concept in middleware is, okay, let's say an error happens. So we could create an error. Error equals new error. Let's just do like that and a pretzel because I saw it. Yeah, pretzel. So this is our error. But if we pass error into next, this actually gets forwarded on to our error handler, and this prints out the stack trace and sends back the message. So you can use this mechanism if in your request handler something went wrong. Instead of like manually sending back an error, if you create an error and you pass it to next, and you have this error handler set up, that's automatically going to send back the error for you. So now every incoming request is just going to be an error.
Would this be like almost like your you could have like a middleware that essentially is like detecting for a specific error?
Yes, so like there are validation middlewares. Like technically, you could take what we did in logging in, where we're doing, like where we're validating the body right here, or validating. So notice how we're validating the body on both of those routes. We could actually turn that into a middleware that says only go on to this request handler if there is a valid body. So yeah, you can write middleware that are essentially error checkers.
Okay, yeah, that because I was just kind of curious, like what the real world application of that would be, rather
Yeah.
than existing outside of the normal error handler.
Yep. Yeah, and so in the chat, Alka mentions path routers with Git, Post, etc. are just fancy middlewares. It's basically like even this is a middleware, but it's very specific. It's like this middleware will only run if the request is a Git and the path is a slash. Who is it? Oliver had an interesting question. So what happens if we call next twice? I think Alka's saying it might ignore it. I think it's going to ignore it. But if you've ever been working with Express and you get a message that says cannot set headers after they are already sent, that means that you essentially did like a res.send or a res.json twice. So you definitely can't do a res.send twice, but I'm curious. Let's see what happens if we call next twice. Do you want to take any guesses as to what will happen, Tony? Two options. Will it throw an error or will it not throw an error?
I mean, maybe it'll give you an error, but it'll still go through.
Let's see. Okay, yeah, so it still went through. And, oh, we actually got that message, cannot set headers after the headers are sent. Tony, if we were here in person, I'd give you a sticker because it did exactly what you said. So we got back the response, but there was like an error under the hood that we accidentally called next twice.
Yeah, I'm still waiting on my t-shirt, man.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I'll send you a t-shirt very soon. Yeah, these are great questions. So by calling next twice, I believe it's literally like going on to, basically it goes here twice, and so we get a res.json twice, and so we're accidentally trying to set headers twice.
What is there any sort of like term for that where like you're essentially like getting errors, but the code is still like working?
Yeah, we're essentially like eating the errors in a way, or like because notice that like, but this technically is like a server-side error. This isn't something that we would send back to the client as an error because we did something wrong in our server-side code. But in a way, unless I was watching the logs, there'd be no way for me to see this. So in a way, we're like eating the errors or hiding them.
Right. Like I know there's like all those like programmer humor type memes where it's like people like just repeatedly compile code until there's no errors, and then they're like, all right, we did it. We fix all the bugs.
Yeah. And so Jiraj was asking in an app.use res.json, will it, in the response? Actually, it will. So like in app.use here, I demonstrated this a little bit ago, but if we do a res.json right here, it ends the response and will basically never go beyond this middleware message. What? And so we shouldn't get any errors, and then now no matter what we request from our server, so we get what? And I could put anything in the URL here, / who, what, when, where. Because that middleware is so generic, every single request to my server is just going to respond with what?
That's interesting.
Isn't it? Yeah, and Alka is mentioning you have to return early. So typically what you'll see a lot is, typically there's like if-else logic, but you might say like put a return statement right here, and that way this second next will never be reached, and my linter is catching it, unreachable code. And that way it won't try to call next twice, it only calls it once.
Does return essentially end like any function?
Absolutely, yeah. The moment a function hits a return statement, it's done. None of the code below that will run. And Alka is mentioning the error was caught, but it was basically routed to devnull, so we kind of just like ignored it and logged it to the Express itself logged it to the console so that we could see that it happened. Okay, this is fun. This is basically a lesson on middlewares. Can you think of any other questions or any other things we should talk about, Tony? Or actually, do you want to give that, now that we've reviewed this, can you give me your definition of a middleware?
So middleware is basically something that we're calling that can be very specific, or it can be generic, essentially some sort of thing on our server that's happening. Could return an error. It's almost like a I'm trying to think of like, it's almost like a function within like a bigger series of like events.
Well, I mean, I like that you said that because like typically we call this the middleware stack. It's basically a stack of functions that each one can call next, which goes on to the next one in the stack. And if it calls next, it goes on to the next one. But the moment one of those functions sends back a response or ends the response, it leaves and doesn't go down to the rest of the stack. But at the bottom of our stack is a not found middleware. Because basically, if a request came into our app and like none of our middlewares sent back a response, then that means it was not found. And so that's why not found is pretty much all the way at the bottom of our stack. And then the very, very last thing is the error handler, because if there was an error, that's going to be the last thing that we can catch, and that's what we'll send back.
So I know there's like a bunch of like specific error codes when it comes to like requests, but
Yeah.
most of those, like, as long as you're not doing like very specific instances that would render those, you don't have to necessarily worry about all of them.
Right. And so like those are called HTTP status codes, and there are different classes. So there's like 200, 300, 400, and 500 level classes. And each have a different meaning, and then you can get even more specific with them. So the 100 range is informational, the 200 range is success, 300 range is you were redirected, 400 is there's some sort of client error, like you sent the wrong data or you're not allowed to do this, and then the 500 range is something went wrong on the server. So, but yeah, you're right. Like if one of those things never happens on your server, then you don't really have to worry about that type of error code.
Okay. Yeah, I know. For example, like I'm doing like a Udemy class for web development, and there's like a guy on there talking about like CSS selectors, and a lot of HTML things, and he was explaining how like there's like 12 that you'll use all the time, but there's so many that are just there, but if you never use them, it doesn't make sense to know all of them.
Sure, yeah, that makes sense. Like for HTTP status codes, I would say you should know 200 because that's successful. You should know that 500 is a server error, 400 is a client error.
But basically, like if you have that like 4 in front of it, you know like what's roughly happening, rather than like, oh, this is 413.
Right.
That?
Yeah, and typically, like if I'd never seen that error code before, I'd look it up. Like, oh, what does error code 418 mean? And Oliver just mentioned this in the chat. So this was error code 418 is hilarious because it's actually like an April Fool's joke from like 1998 or something like that. Let's see. But error code 418 is I'm a teapot, and it's literally in the specification. But yeah, so it's a client error response code, indicates that the server refuses to brew coffee because it is a teapot. This was like back in 1998, but even back then they were talking about the Internet of Things. Where like, okay, let's say a teapot is hooked up to the internet and you try to request it to make coffee. If that's the case, it should respond with 418, which is I'm a teapot.
That's funny.
Isn't it? But yeah, April Fool's joke from 1998.
What is the whole programmer joke where like it's like as like programmers talk about like the beginning of time was like 1970 because like for whatever reason code doesn't go past that time?
Well, not code, but that's the Linux epoch. We're getting like kind of off topic here, but Linux epoch is technically started on January 1st, 1970, and so every timestamp is relative to January 1st, 1970. It's either a negative number, which means it came before it, or a positive number, which is sometime after January 1st, 1970. Then there's also the Linux, what is it called? I think in the year 2023 or 32, something happens where 32-bit computers can't hold something. Linux epoch rollover? The year 2038 problem. Okay, yeah. So in the year 2038, the numbers that represent that are using the epoch will actually roll over and go back to January 1st, 1990. It's going to basically be in the year 2038. It's going to be like another Y2K problem.
All right, so in 20 years we'll figure that out.
Yeah.
We'll do a Newb quest on that.
Cool. So before we get too off topic, there is a question from M. How does the error handler function know when it needs to be executed? So 2 ways. First is if you pass in an error to next. So if you explicitly create an error and then pass it into next, the rule is if there is a parameter in next, that means skip everything, go straight to the error handler and show the error there. That's one way. The other way is to actually throw an error. So first, let's see this. This should give us back an error because we're calling next with an error. So yeah, we get the error with our stack trace. But the other way is if you throw an error and don't call next, it actually automatically forwards on to the error handler. So instead of calling next here, if I just say throw, because I have that error handler there, it'll still catch it. But those are the 2 ways. You either throw an error or call next on an error. The tricky thing, though, is if you throw an error inside of asynchronous code, like a promise, that will not happen. So when you're writing promises, you always need to make sure to do a catch and call next in the catch. Yeah, and Flamingo, we're talking about Auth today. So we just did a refresher on like what middlewares are because we're about to write an is logged in middleware. Okay, Tony. I think that's about as much review as we can and will do. And we're gonna write a legitimate middleware now that does the thing. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, so oh yeah, so that is definitely not found, but okay, so our server's back and working. If we look at our README, we want to create a where are we at? Right here, an is logged in middleware. So basically, this middleware can be used anywhere after check token set user has already been in the stack. Because if you remember, this middleware that we wrote is setting rec.user. So here we're setting rec.user. So we're going to write a middleware that just checks to see if this exists. If this exists, we know that we already parsed the token, they're a valid user, they're allowed in. If it doesn't, we can immediately create a 401 unauthorized error and exit. So let's do it. So we're going to create a middleware called isLoggedIn. And let's do that right here. So create a function called isLoggedIn that takes in 3 parameters, rec, res, and next. And Flamingo says, I love your channel. Appreciate that, Flamingo.
Oh wait, I gotta put those in parentheses, don't I?
No, sir. So because this isn't an arrow function, it's just like a regular function. It's fine. Yeah, just like that. Okay. And basically what we need to do is we need to make sure that rec.user is a thing. So just say if rec.user.
Okay. If
rec.user.
User? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so if rec.user is defined and then create a body, we want to go on to the next middleware. So how do we do that? Oh, look at you. Yeah, invoke next. Else, we need to create an error. So curly braces, not parentheses. So else, so if there was no user on the request, let's create an error. So create a variable called error.
Okay, I don't have to do, okay, so we're doing a new error.
Const error, like lowercase error equals new error. And the message here, so in quotes, just say unauthorized. Oh, hey, Nick. Nick says he loves my channel too. I appreciate it. Quellhorst, first time I have seen rainbows in code. We like, here at the Coding Garden, we like emojis in our code. Okay, so we've created this error. Now, Tony, think back to 2 minutes ago. How can we send this error on to the error handler?
Do we have to just do another next?
Next with what? It's a special next.
Next error?
Yeah, so That was the oh, not like not
Oh!
that, but that. Yeah, error. Yes. So the rule is if you call next without an argument, it just goes on to the next thing. If you call next with an argument, it's going to go to our error handler. Cool. So I'm just going to capitalize this, do that, and then add a nice little emoji here, like you cannot enter. Let's do it right here too. Okay. The only thing is, instead of just sending the error, we also want to set this to be a 401 status code. So right here, let's take a quick break. Amy says, "You rock, Tony."
I'm trying.
No, you're doing great, dude. Yeah. So like we reviewed it. You're doing the code. Okay. So we want to set the status code to be 401. So do res.status.
Res.status.
And then invoke it and pass in 401.
You've seen Rick and Morty, right?
I have.
Like I feel like Jerry, whenever the Meeseeks are trying to teach him how to golf, they're like, is he working on his swing? He's like, oh, he's trying.
Yeah, Tony is trying. Cool, but you're like, so for all the noobs watching out there, like you embody them, and yes, people believe in you, Tony. Okay, so we have this middleware. It checks to make sure that there is a user on the request. If there is, we call next. If there wasn't, we create an error, set the status code, and then forward that error on. Great. So last thing in this file is to export is logged in. So just add is logged in down there to the exports. Great. And now we want to use it. We don't really have any routes that we can protect right now, but let's see. So
later on, the admin is going to be the protected route.
Well, yeah, so actually I didn't even mention this at the beginning, but basically here's what we want to do. So we have now an app that can log users in, can make sure that they're logged in, and basically what we're going to do is allow users to have their own notes. So when you're logged in, you can add notes to yourself. They'll have a title and a description that's Markdown, and only you, the logged in user, can see your notes. If you're not logged in, you can't see anyone's notes, but if you are logged in, you can see your notes. And if you try to access this while being not logged in, you will get unauthorized. So let's set that up. Basically, we're going to have a router for creating and getting notes, but it's going to be behind this is logged in middleware, where basically if you're not logged in, you can't even see or touch any of the routes behind the notes router. Sound good?
Yeah.
Let's do it. Okay. So in the server folder, we're going to create a new folder. Let's call this API, and in there, I'm going to create a file called let's call this notes.js. Okay, so in this file, we're going to create an express router. So bring in the express library, go and require it in. Okay, so create a variable called express, lowercase express. And then set that equal to require invoked with express in quotes. Lowercase express, yes. Okay, so that brings in the express library. And then now we want to create a router. So say create a variable called router and set that equal to express.capital router invoked. Oh, not require, just express. There we go. So that creates a router. Now we want to make this available to any file that requires this file in. So how do we do that in Node?
Export.
Yeah, so module.exports and set that equal to router. equals router. Cool. And for now, we're just going to make a basic get route for, it'll be like API/v1/notes, like to get that route. So do router.get. And the path is going to be /notes. And then after that, create a request handler. So an arrow function with rec and res. Don't forget your comma in parentheses. Whoa. Let me help you out. There you go. Okay. And then inside of this request handler, let's just respond with an empty array. So do a res.json and just pass in an empty array. Invoke it. Empty array. Cool. Okay, so basically, if someone makes a request to this route, they should just get back an empty array. Now, we created this router, but right now it's totally separate from our Express app. We basically want to take this router, add it on to our Express app, so that way the route actually exists. So in our main file, we're going to bring it in. So right here, create a variable called notes, and then require in that notes file. So let me expand the path for you real quick. It's in the API folder. So you're going to require it in. And it will be a relative path. Not quite. So right now, we're in this folder, and we need to go into API and grab the notes file. So notice how we did it with Auth. It's going to be very similar for notes. /notes. Yes. So this requires in what was exported right here. And now we want to use it. So here's what we'll do. We'll use it after auth. So do an app.use.
Okay. Dot.
And the path here, so do quotes. Let's do /API/v1. Well, actually, okay, so do /notes. We're going to have to, yeah, so /v1/notes. We're going to have to fix the route that we created, but that's okay. And then the second parameter is notes. Yes, and don't forget your comma. So, well, the idea is when a request comes into our app that begins with the path API v1 notes, it's then going to go into this router, and that path will be prepended before it. So really, we want this to be /, because if we set this as /, when a request comes into API v1 notes, it goes in here, and it's like, oh, you just made a GET request on /. It should respond with an empty array. If we look back at our auth routes, it's a similar idea. So we have our auth router that we created. We used it at /auth, but in the auth router, we have routes that are just /signup and /login. But when we're requesting them, we actually request /auth/login and /auth/signup. So this is a way of taking some routes and putting a URL in front of it. Okay?
Okay.
Okay, Tony. So in Postman, I want to make a request to get this route. Like I want to get back an empty array. What is the URL that I'm going to need to make a request against?
It's going to be API/v1/notes.
Yes. And so if I click send, what should I get back?
Nothing, just the empty array.
Empty array. And it works. Great. But now we want to protect this. So I want to make it so that if I don't send an authorization header, instead of getting back an empty array, I want to see that unauthorized message. Okay?
All right.
All right, so here's how we do it. In index.js, what I can say is right here, let's type middlewares dot is logged in. Yes. And now, just like that, all of the routes inside of this router are protected by this is logged in middleware that we wrote. So if I make a request here, what's going to happen is it's going to go into the is logged in middleware, and it's going to say, is this user logged in? Do they have like a token on set that's valid? If they do, just go on and let them request what's inside of that router. If they don't, respond with unauthorized. Okay?
Okay.
So basically there are multiple ways to add middlewares. We've seen it before where you just do app.use, but it's also possible to do like comma separated, and basically they just run in order. So like if this calls next, then it's going to allow the request to go into there. So Tony, I ask you, now that I'm not setting an authorization header and I make this request, what will happen?
We're going to get that error with the pretzel.
The pretzel. Not the pretzel, but the unauthorized header. So because I'm trying to request notes and I don't have an authorization header set, unauthorized. But if I send the authorization header, if it's valid, I should actually get back the empty array. So we are now protecting that route. You must be logged in to request notes.
So right now, the way notes works is notes is like a path that anyone can see.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, technically, like this is backend code, so like they can't see our code. But the thing is, even if they knew that this URL existed, if they didn't have a valid login, they couldn't. They would get unauthorized. They couldn't make a request to it.
Well, what I'm saying is, like, for example, like the dashboard kind of exists as like something specific to that user right now.
Right.
But this particular path is available to everyone. It's not like specific to that individual.
Right. And so what we're going to do is when we actually eventually get all of the notes from the database, we're going to use rec.user.id. And that will allow us to only get the notes that one user has created. So the URL is going to look the same for all users, but depending on who's logged in and who makes the request, they're only going to get back their stuff.
Right. So like if like I go to like gmail.com, like I see my mail versus, like your Gmail.
Right. And we both see the same URL, but because we're logged in as different users, the server is sending us back different information.
Okay.
Yes. Very cool. Okay. So we have that. Now, let's do some client work. We've been working on the server. We're full stack developers. Let's go to the client for a second. So basically what we want is on the dashboard page, we'll have a form where a user can add a note, and that will send it to the server. After we get done with this form, we'll set up the backend route that will actually like put these in the database. Okay?
All right.
All right, so let me go ahead and commit what I have. Anyone watching live, if you have any questions, go ahead and ask them now. I'm going to commit what we have here, and then I'll push it up.
I like that you have the alien on there now.
Oh, it's random. So like each new terminal, it picks from like 5 different emojis.
Okay.
Cactus, world, alien, yeah.
Or maybe it's trying to do like Roswell. It's referencing that.
This alien, you mean?
No, I'm saying like you have like a planet, an alien, and a cactus, and it's like representing like Area 51.
Yeah, I can see it. So it actually comes from my bash profile. Let's see. So in my bash profile, I have an array of these emojis. These are just the ones that I liked. There's the Space Invader, the dragon, and the dice also. Oh, but there's no alien there.
Spooky.
No, this is just outdated. I think I added an alien. Cool. Okay, so basically what we want is here on the client, on their dashboard, we're going to have a nice little form, probably at the top right here, where they can put in like a title, their note, and then add it, and it'll get listed on the page. So let's work on that. So if we go to the client, on the dashboard page, we want a form. So right here, let's create a form. And just as a quick aside, we are using Vue.js on the front end. We're using Bootstrap. We're not using VueStrap, which is like a component library. We're just using basic Bootstrap. So if we were to look at the Bootstrap website, we can see how we would create a nice styled form. Let's look at forms. And Arif in the chat says, in the future, can you make an app that uses full TypeScript? I can try, yeah. So I've done a little bit of TypeScript. I did an episode a while back on TypeScript and Angular 5. And then in the front-end showdown, I used Angular 6 with TypeScript. It would be interesting. I did C# for a very long time, and the creator of C# created TypeScript, so it's got a lot of good things in it. Cool. And Im is asking, where do you set the bearer string in your code? In my code, in my local storage, I only have the plain token string. Yeah, and so I can show really quick. Right now on the front end, we're making one request that actually does set the header. And if you look in dashboard.view, the fetch and mounted, this is very similar to how all of our authenticated requests are going to look. So on your headers, you say authorization, you put the word bearer, and then you put the value of the token that's inside of local storage. And this is essentially how JavaScript can make the request to the server that's replicating what we're doing here with Postman. These are the one and the same. So fetch built into the browser has a way of actually like setting those headers, so that's how we do it there. And hello, Clever Tech. Welcome to the stream. Yes. Okay, Tony. So we want to make a form. I think, so we're going to have title and description. We probably want like a text area and then just like a simple title box.
I was going to say, like, when we actually make the note, do you want to use like a card or something?
Oh, to show the list of notes?
Yeah, like we could have like a little card that shows like the time that it was put in. And...
Yeah, that'd be great because we could show like title of the card and then the description. And I mentioned we're like gonna like render it with Markdown. Let's look at Bootswatch because we are using, which one are we using? Superhero?
I think so.
Yeah, we're using this one. And so they have like, they show how to do, there's indicators and then like, you could have like cards with a header. So like the title will be the title of the note. And then inside of here will be the contents of the note. And we could like list them across the page. Definitely. Okay. But yeah, let's make a form. Let's just grab this because that's what's going to be our title of the note. Let's change the name to title. Title. All right, Tony, change the type there to text. And then on the small tag, the ID should be title. And actually, yeah, well, what was it before email? Yeah, so make this title help, actually. And then on our ARIA tag, let's change this to, change the email help there to be title help. And the placeholder can be enter a title.
I'm having a hard time selecting all that stuff. Okay, got it.
Got it.
Sure. The title.
Okay, and the ARIA description, this is basically what a screen reader would read if a blind person was using our app. So let's just say I don't know, enter a descriptive title for your note.
I was going to put, do you want to play a game? Enter
a descriptive title for your note.
Title for your note.
Cool. What is this complaining about? Line 9 exceeds maximum line length. That's okay. Is it okay? It's not okay. We'll just do this. Do. Oh, don't want to do that. Okay, so now on the home page, we should see a nice little enter a title for your note. Actually, I want to see if I can turn off really quick. I keep getting all these suggestions for form inputs. Advanced. Passwords and forms. Autofill settings. Do not autofill forms. There we go. Okay, so we got the title. Let's also throw... Actually, should we put the form below the logout button?
No, I think logout should be like the bottom.
Well, we're also going to have... I mean, really, we should put logout.
Yeah. Put it like...
Up here?
Yeah, like you could put your... the name of your account thing, and maybe like a little icon of like a silhouette.
Yeah. Okay. We're not working on that right now, though. But for now, I am just going to put this button above the form. But I think I do. If I don't have it in my README, I'll add it as a to-do. So I do have on the home page show go to dashboard instead of sign up or login button. Let's also say show logout button in header, and then also show user icon and username in header. Cool. Let's just say like if logged in, do those things. We will come back to that. Okay, so we have the title. Now let's grab like a text area. Example text area. This looks good. We're going to put that right about there. Change this to description. I mean, should we call it description or should we call it note?
Yeah, just be like, or I guess you can, yeah, like, enter your note.
Well, I mean, that's the label. We could have a placeholder on the text area. Let's do that. Enter your note. Okay. Someone has mentioned to me before, like, I should get a formatter for my HTML. I think I got it working at one point, but then I like wiped my computer. I didn't save the settings. I don't know. Okay, so that's our text area. Let's see, how does it look? Looks decent. So title, today I paired with Tony. It was fun. We learned about middlewares. Okay, but that's the idea. Then we'll have a button to submit it. It'll add it, and then we'll show all the notes below it. So let's add a button. Take a quick stretch. How you feeling, Tony?
I feel good. I feel like it's coming along.
It is coming along. What's your nosebleed level?
Probably like a 2 out of 10.
Oh wow. Okay.
I need to do that. That's like, so I mentioned to you, like, I need to do the some like little logos for Newb Quest, but I think I'll this weekend as well, I'll make like a series of 10 like pixel whatchamacallits, basically like a representation of my face.
Yeah,
like 1 is like fresh, 10 is like nosebleed.
Okay. Yeah, it'd be cool to like, I could probably set it up with my stream software where like if you set it, and then people on the stream can actually see what is Tony's current nosebleed level.
Yeah, I mean, we could have like a nosebleed in the corner. We have a logo in the corner as well.
Cool.
It'll almost look like, yeah, it'll look like CNN or something, like just logos and text everywhere all over the screen.
Definitely. All right, while we're at it, let's also just add like a toggle button that says like toggle form. So like the form isn't always showing, but like you hide and show it. So right about here, let's just have a button that says toggle form. And we'll make it button info. And so we need something on our data that represents whether or not the form is showing. So let's add that. Let's call it show form. And initialize it to false. Cool. And in Vue.js, how do we conditionally show something if something is true?
VF.
Yeah, so do a VF show form. So this form should only be showing if show form is true. Cool. And then when we click this toggle button, we basically just want to flip this on and off. So we'll say show form equals not show form. So it should just toggle it on and off. So actually, we want this to be like on the next line. We will fix this today. I promise. Okay, toggle form, it shows it, hides it, shows it. Cool. I swear we're gonna fix this.
Is there a way in Vue to actually have like a toggle versus like just a button?
Oh, like a, well, it wouldn't be Vue, it'd be Bootstrap, but you mean like a little on-off switch?
Yeah, like that little.
Let's see. There's radio buttons. Let's look at buttons. Button tags, outline buttons, active state. Well, we could do like
drop downs.
On off.
Try that drop down thing.
Where?
On the left.
This?
Yeah.
I mean, it's gonna be like that though.
Oh.
I know what you're talking about there. Let's search for toggle. Button plugin toggle states. No, I mean, that just turns the button on or off. Yeah, it looks like Bootstrap doesn't have it by default. Maybe in utilities? Off? On, off? Yeah, I don't see it.
We'll live with the button.
Yeah. I like where your head's at, that, Tony. So show the form, hide the form. Okay, but if we're showing the form, we need to fill it out. So on our data, we're going to keep track of the form. So let's create a property called new note. And it's going to be an object. And it has two properties, title, which is initially an empty string, and note, which is initially an empty string. Okay. So now we want to bind our form to that object. So on the input, do you remember the directive for binding an input to our data?
No.
It's called a vmodel, v-model.
vmodel.
Yeah,
okay.
so if you do v-model and set that equal to new note, do equals, double quotes, new note dot title. This essentially binds this input to that on our data. And we want to do the same thing with our text area, but we're going to define, wait, did we call it description? We should call this note. There we go. Copy that. And so this should be new note dot note. Okay. And whenever this form is submitted, we will send it to our server. So one thing we should do is title should be required, and note is also required. So they can't submit the form without actually typing something in. Do you remember how we can call a function when a form is submitted in Vue.js?
No, we're not doing at.
Oh, yeah, it is going to be at. So at is for events. And what's the event that we care about on a form?
Submit.
Yeah, so at submit. Do dot prevent, because that will prevent the default action. And then just set that equal to, let's create a function called
Post note.
add note, create note, add note. Yeah, it's called add note. Cool. And we can invoke it. And, well, this isn't an invocation. This says when this is submitted, invoke that function. And so now we need a method called add note. So let's put it right here. So create a method called add note. And inside of here, let's just log this.new note. Okay. Oop. So now when we submit the form, we should see what the user entered. I'm going to go ahead and close Postman. Okay, so open up the DevTools. That's not what I want. Okay, so. Okay, toggle the form. Title. Today I paired with Tony. We learned things. It was fun. Okay, so if I click this button, it should submit it, and it's logging it twice. Why is it logging it twice? Is it because I'm invoking it? Oh, because I put a click handler on the button. We don't want that. What we want is the type of this button should be submit, so that when this button is clicked, it fires the submit handler of the form. That's what we want. Yeah, that should make it only log once. So test title. This is a note. Add the note, and then it logs out note and title. Great. Now we want to send it to our server.
So we're going to be doing a post request to the notes.
Yes,
route.
yes. Yeah, so the route doesn't exist yet, but we'll go ahead and write it because then we'll write the backend route. So right here, let's go ahead and let's do a fetch. So do a fetch.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see, we have an API URL. What is it? It's just localhost 5000. Cool. So we can use that. So invoke fetch, and then pass in a template literal. It's the backticks.
Mm-hmm.
And
where's the back?
near the tilde on your keyboard.
Ah.
Do a money sign, curly braces. And inside of there, we're going to do API underscore URL. Cool. And so this variable is localhost colon 5000. So we need to do API v1 notes. So we're going to be sending this request to our server at API v1 notes.
Okay.
And we need to specify some options. So the first thing is the method here is what? So do
post.
Lowercase method. Then the value is a string with post inside of it. Money. I would do either all caps post or like singular post. Oh, is that because this is not the universal money sign? This is the dollar sign. Sorry. I realize there are a lot of international viewers out there. Because, no, that would be super interesting. Like if in the UK, when you're using template literals, you have to do a pound symbol.
That is funny.
And so a question from Simjohn, can express routes use Unicode or emoji characters? I believe they can. It's just finicky. Like when you define the route, it actually has to have extra characters on it. I think in a bit I can demonstrate that because I've tried to do it before. But so like in Postman, you can put an emoji in the URL, but when Express receives that request, it has like some extra characters on the end. Okay. All right, and we need to specify a body of this request. So what we're sending, so the property is body. And what are we sending to the server?
We're sending the note.
Yeah, so new note. So we need to stringify it though. So do a JSON.stringify, all caps JSON. .stringify, and then invoke it and pass in this.new note.
I do that in surgery sometimes. I'm just like,
Does it get on people's nerves?
Yes.
Cool.
It just depends.
Yeah. Okay, so we've bundled up this note that they're creating. We're sending it to the server, and now we need to specify some headers. So go ahead and create headers, and this is going to be an object.
Okay.
Hey, Tiger, welcome to the stream. So we first need to set the content type because we need to tell Express, hey, we are sending you JSON data. So the value here is application/JSON. Do /JSON.
Oh, sorry.
No worries. And then the other thing is we need to send our authorization header in the request. So we can see how we did this last time. Basically, it's just this. So by sending our authorization header when we're creating a note, the server will allow us into that route, and then we'll actually be able to use the logged in user's ID to store that in the database with the note. So we know which notes belong to which user. Cool. So we're posting to notes, we're sending the note, we're telling the server that we're sending it JSON, we're sending it our token so we're authorized. Should work. Do a .then here. And then we should get back res. So inside of here, do res, and then a fat arrow, res.json. Invoke it. Cool. So this should give us back, and then that should be like the note that got created, and we'll just log it to the console. Okay, so this is great. The only thing is this route doesn't exist on the back end yet, so we can try it, but we are going to get a error that route could not be found. Let's try it though. So hello, what's up? Go. And then it was not found. Before we go, there is a question from M. Why does content type need to be in quotes while authorization doesn't? It's because in JavaScript, the properties on an object, the only a valid property has to begin with a letter, and it can't have spaces or any other character inside of it. So if you ever have an object that needs to have special characters in it, in the property name, you have to wrap it in single quotes. Yeah, and Jiraj is asking why can we write this.new note instead of this.data.new note? So in Vue.js, anything that is on your data is accessible directly from this inside of your methods or lifecycle methods. Let's take a quick stretch. So you don't ever say this.data, you just say this dot, and you have access to everything that's on data. And under the hood, Vue.js is essentially creating a this instance that has access to all of these properties and access to all of your methods and everything else. Okay, so now we need to create a backend route. I'll go ahead and commit the code. Questions, Mr. Tony? Let me check some boxes too.
I guess my question would be like, are the notes going to be on a route called notes, or are they going to be on the dashboard? In which case, do we need to have another way to view the notes versus like I'm on the dashboard to create notes, but I can't see notes at the same time?
My thought is we'll just list them here. So like we'll show all of the notes on the dashboard.
Okay.
Like, yeah, so here you're just going to see your list of all your notes.
So like right below the input.
Yeah, exactly. Technically, I mean, we could call this notes instead of dashboard, but it's totally up to us. Like our client and server routes can be called whatever they want.
Yeah, I think dashboard's fine. I was just curious, like, because they're different routes.
Definitely.
Okay.
And Fatma says, "Hey CJ, hello. First time catching a live stream. Love them videos. Appreciate it. Thanks for tuning in." Okay, let me commit this. Wait, did I check the boxes? That's what I was going to do. I did check the boxes. Sparkles. Add notes form to client. All right. It's on GitHub. Now, we need to create a post route. So we're going to go to the server, to our notes router, and we need to create a post route. So right here, do a router.post. And the URL will just be /. And then we'll have, after that, a request handler. So just rec and res. Cool. And these are the things we have to do. So first, we're already checking that they must be logged in, because for every single route inside of this router, we've already put it behind the isLoggedIn middleware. So to do anything with notes, you have to be logged in. So that's already taken care of. Now, we need to basically hook this up to the database. So we can see before in Auth how we inserted things into users. So we're using MongoDB, and we're using a package called Monk to actually connect to the database. So in our Auth router, we grab the database connection that's in this folder here, which is just connecting to our localhost Mongo database instance. Sorry, where we go? And then db.get just gets access to a specific collection in that database. So we're going to do a very similar thing to talk to the database over here. So we're in API, we go up one folder, we go into DB, so that grabs the connection. But instead of getting users, we want to get notes. So the way MongoDB works is if you're adding things to a collection that doesn't exist, it'll automatically create it for you. So easy enough to just create that that connection, and now we can start inserting things into the database. Okay, we want to validate this incoming note, so we can see how we did validation for login. We had to create a schema using Joy. So similarly, we'll bring in Joy to this file, and then we'll also bring in the schema, but now we get to define it ourselves. So what are the two things that a note has, Tony?
A title and a note.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and add those there.
Okay.
And yeah, and then change password to be note.
Whoop.
Whoop, 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 whoop.
Come on.
Do you need me to?
No, I got it.
You got it? Okay.
No, I can do it.
Cool.
And I think, yeah, we'll just leave the same schema.
Yeah, so the schema is the same, but we do have to change the validation. So if you haven't heard of Joy before, it's a validation library. You can check it out on NPM. Joy. And basically it allows you to validate object schemas. So you can have any kind of schema and validate that it adheres to that. So basically we're sending an object to our server that has title and note, and we're going to pass it through this validation to make sure that that's all it has and it matches these things. So let's say a title has to be a minimum of, let's just say a max of 100 characters. And let's say if we do trim, that means it can't be blank. So you can't have a blank title, and it has to be a maximum of 100 characters. And then let's just say that the note can't be blank, and your note can be as long as you want. How's that sound?
Sounds great.
Tony digs it. All right, so got our schema. Now we want to take the data that we're sending the server and insert it into the database. So the first thing we need to do is validate the data. So you can see in our login route how we did that. So basically you say joy.validate. You pass in the request body because that's the data that the client's sending to the server, and you also pass in the schema and it'll validate it against that. So we're going to do a very similar thing right about here. So if there was no error, meaning error was null, then we will insert into DB. Else, we need to create an error and send back an error that basically they tried to send us something that was not valid. So let's create a new error. So create a variable called error.
Okay. Const error.
New error. And actually, let's see, how were we doing this before? We just did result.error. Yeah, I'm okay with that. So do result.error. And then after that, we do need to forward on this error. So we're going to have to actually use next. So we specify that as a parameter. And then now we call next and pass in the error. And we do need to set a status code. I actually think that 422 is the right status code. Let's look up, because I think that's unprocessable entity. HTTP status code 422. Because basically, if there was an error here, that means that they didn't send us the right data. Either title or note was blank, or they tried to send us something else. And 422 is unprocessable entity. The server understands the content type of the request, and the syntax of the request is correct, but was unable to process the contained instructions. So basically, somebody sent us stuff that we didn't understand. So that, it makes sense to use that status code. So right here, just do a res.status and pass in 422. Cool. So that should send back an error if it was invalid. Now we can insert it into the database. So we can see how we inserted users. It's going to be very similar. We basically did users.insert, passed in the thing, and then got it back. So we're going to do that right here. So in this case, we want to use notes. So do notes.insert. But not note. Where is the note?
Oh, it's in the request.
Yeah, in the request body. So we're going to insert rec.body.
Rec.body.
And do a .then on the end of that. Not after the parenthesis.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
And in here, we're going to get access to the note that got inserted. And we'll actually just respond with that. So do a res.json.
Okay.
And pass in the note. Oh, but actually, one thing I completely and totally forgot is before we insert it, we need to set the user ID to be the logged in user's ID. So if we look at our README, so we have title, description, we're validating it, but set user ID on the server with the logged in user's ID. So basically, if we inserted this into the database, we would not know who it belonged to. It would just be a note with a title and a contents, but it wouldn't belong to any specific user. So let's do this. Let's create a variable called note that takes the two properties from rec.body. So the spread operator is going to take title and note and put it in this object. But we also want user ID, and we want to set that to the currently logged in user's ID. So Tony, if you think back to our middlewares, where did we put the user?
Wasn't it in its own thing just called user?
But where? Yeah, so it is called user, but how do we get access to it?
Um,
I'll show you the middleware. So there's that, but then there's also that. So,
so that is logged in method
but where is the user?
under the list of users?
It's on the request.
Oh, okay.
So rec.user. So basically, because we already have this middleware set up for this route, we have access to rec.user. So right here, we can actually get the currently logged in user's ID. So just do rec.user.
Okay. Rec.user.
Dot underscore ID. And because this user is an existing user from our Mongo database, this ID is their actual ID in the database, and we're actually putting it on the note. So now when we insert that note is going to have the user's ID on it. And later on in this route, when we have to query the database to get all of the notes for that user, we can basically say, give me all notes where user ID is rec.user.id. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a little bit? Okay.
I think we're at nosebleed level 4 now.
Okay, it's getting a little bit worse. Let me bring up my Mongo app real quick to show what's happening here. So right now we just have a users collection, and got a few users that were created in there. But what we're about to do is create a note, and it's going to be inserted. So currently, I believe we're logged in as final Newb, and its user ID is this ID here, 5B, 6F, etc. So, moment of truth, we are going to attempt to create a note on the server. Let's watch our server logs. Let's do a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Okay, so title, today I paired with Tony. It was fun. For the following reasons. Reason number 1, he's a cool guy. Reason number 2, Auth is fun. Reason number 3, I appreciate people watching my stream. Reason number 1, I appreciate Tony being a good sport.
Thinking about Damper's new groove.
What about it?
When he has the angels on his shoulder, and like there's like the bad angel, like talking about like why you should something about the Kronk is doing something, and he's like, reason number 2, look what I can do, and he's like standing on his hands, and he's like, what does that have to do? He's like, wait a minute, no, he's got a point.
Cool. So I did mention this earlier, but it should allow valid Markdown. Okay, so when I click add note, it's going to make that post request. It's going to validate the data. It's going to insert it with the currently logged in user's ID. And we should get back the note that was inserted. Tony, I'll let you click the button.
Okay, and we're currently logged in as final Newb.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, so it worked. So we actually got back the thing that was inserted, and now, so it has a user ID. That's the user ID of the currently logged in user. It has an ID for that specific note. And so now, can we refresh this? Can we close it?
As of right now, if you send the exact same note, will it just log that note twice?
Yeah. So we're not doing any validation to say that, like, you can't have 2 notes that have the same title or anything like that.
Okay.
We could add that, but now, I mean, it's yeah, I don't know. But now we have a notes collection, and if we look at it, see there is one note, and it has some stuff in it. The user ID, take note of this, 5B6F183AE5. It ends in CC. And if you look in our users, final Newb's ID is 5B6F, and it ends with CC. So every single note that's going to be in this collection has a specific user's ID. So when we query the database, we can only get back notes that belong to that specific user. Cool?
Cool.
Cool. Okay. So now we need a route that gets all the notes in the database and then returns them. So let's add a few more notes. Arif is saying make the validation with hash. You meaning like validate these things in here? So one thing I want to do though is actually render the note as Markdown. So it should actually take these and render them as like H1s and an H2, H3, show like a numbered list, etc. Okay. One thing we should do though is after submission, it should clear out the form on the client side. So let's do that. So go to our views, dashboard, and basically, so we get the note here. Let's say this.new note is just a new object with title as an empty string and note as an empty string. And then let's also say this.toggle show form is false. So the moment you create a note, it hides the form and clears out the form. And yeah. Also, after inserting a note, we should actually just push it into the array. So we're going to have an array of notes. In a moment, after we create the route to get all of the notes, we'll fill up that array with them. But for now, after creating a note, we can just push it into that array. So like this.notes.push note. So basically, immediately after you create a note, it's going to get put to the end of the list. Okay, but now, when I add a new note, what should my note be? Actually, do you want to add a note, Tony? Add a note.
Yes.
Okay, go for it.
Today, I coded. Why is life so cruel? All right, and then add the note, and then it's gone.
Yeah. So now the form hides. It sent it to the server. If we look at our logs, it was a successful. And if we look in our database, it should be there. Yeah. So now we have 2 notes. There they are. All right. Let's add like one more. Go for it.
All right. I still was coding nosebleed level 5. Oh, on enter is not submit.
It should be. I just want to make that a header. Add a list of items.
List of items.
Yeah. So what are the reasons? Why is your nosebleed level 5? And do lists with stars like that.
So this is on an ordered list.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Vue is somewhat confusing. I went to art school.
See ya, Amy. Thanks for tuning in.
Not computer science. And the last one is backend is weird.
I like it.
All right,
Nice.
and then if I hit enter though, it's like it's just going.
Okay, so and that's because this is a text area by default. Give me the mouse.
Oh.
By default, a text area. So because I think we want that because
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I want to be able to like add new lines. So yeah, but I think if I click enter with my cursor in here, yeah, it does submit the form. And if we run this query again, we now have all 3 notes in our database. Cool. So let's build the backend route that actually gets these things out of the database. So to the backend, notes, and this is going to be on the get route here. So to query the database, we use find. So just do notes.find.
Okay, notes, and this is going to search through our array.
Well, not through our database.
Oh, okay.
And we need to pass in an object.
Okay. Notes.find.
And in this object, we're basically looking for notes where user ID is the current user's ID. So you specify user underscore ID as the property, and then the value is the currently logged in user's ID. How do we get that?
Is that what we need with the bearer?
I'll give you a hint. I'll give you a hint. We've already done it before. So I asked you this a few times. Where is the user?
Rec.user.
Yeah. So rec.user._ID.
Wait, rec.user_.id or
No.
Okay. .user_ID.
Yeah. ._ID. Exactly. Nope.
Okay.
Well, nope. Like that. Notice we did the same thing here, right? Because and actually, I think I can show this in Postman. The user object is actually what's inside of the token. So let's see what is actually in our token. So let's make the request here. So this is what the user object looks like. It has the ID of the user and the username of the user. So when we say rec.user, we're talking about this thing right here, and that's the currently logged in user.
Okay.
Okay, and so _ID basically gives us their ID. So we do a find. We say, okay, give me all the things in the database where user ID is this user's ID. And then we should get back the notes. And then we want to respond with those notes. So in Express, how do we respond with JSON? Give you a hint if we've done it before.
Okay, so we do res.json.
Yeah.
Okay, so res JSON .stringify.
No. We want to send back the notes that we just got.
Oh, okay. So get.
No, invoke it.
Okay.
And pass in the notes. Yeah. So basically, this says, okay, query the database for all of the notes where the user ID is the currently logged in user's ID. Get back those notes and then respond with those notes. Cool.
Okay.
All right. So we should actually be able to request this in Postman now. So if I do API v1 notes, and right now this authorization header, oh, actually this is Newb 4. So actually we should get back an empty array. Yeah, because Newb 4 has not created any notes. However, if we set our token to be the final Newb's token, we should see their notes. Let's actually grab their token out of local storage. Application, local storage, token. So I mean, in the way to think about this is right now, if we make this request in Postman with this header, we're actually logged in as Newb 4. But if I change this token to be this token, now we're logged in as final Newb, and when we request notes, we get back their specific notes. So this route is dependent and specific on the user that's actually logged in. They're only going to get back their specific information. Cool?
That's awesome.
Isn't it? All right, so now let's actually make this request on the front end and then list out all the notes. Okay. I feel like we're at a good place to commit. Let me go ahead and commit. Add post and get notes on server. Push it up. Cool. So now on the client side, when the dashboard loads, we basically want to get all of those notes and show them on the page. So here, in mounted, the first thing we do in mounted is basically make sure that they're logged in. So like we request to the server, make sure that the server gives us back a user, and then do the thing. So let's actually just create a method right here called get notes. Okay, and then give it a body. And then inside of here, we want to basically, it's going to be a very similar request to add note, but we won't have to specify the method or the body. But we need to do a fetch. It's going to be to API v1 notes. Oh, backticks. curly braces. Let me help you out, Tony. It's basically this. It's exactly this. Yeah? Yes? You still there, Tony?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay,
mm-hmm.
cool. So if the method is post, it's creating a note, but by default, fetch does a get, so this should give us back all the notes. But then we will have to specify headers because we need to specify the authorization header, because if we don't send the authorization header, then we won't be allowed to make the request to notes. Hey, Musa, welcome to the stream.
So we're doing the same.
Not content type though. The only one we need here is authorization.
Okay. Authorization.
Mm-hmm.
Backticks.
Bearer.
Ooh.
Curly braces. Close curly braces. Sweet. Yeah, and it just wants a trailing comma. And actually, we can leave off the quotes on authorization because it is an object. Okay, so that should make the request to get the notes. Then we'll parse the response as JSON. And then we should get back the notes. And we have this array on our data called notes. So we're just going to set that array to be these notes that we got back. So let's say this.notes equals notes. And my linter wants that. So we have this method. It makes the request to get all of the notes for the currently logged in user by sending their token. And then when we get back the notes, it puts it on data. So basically, we need to call this method right about here. Because this is, when the component loads, we first make sure that they actually are logged in. If they are logged in, we set the current user, and then we can make the request to get the notes. Because if they weren't logged in, then there would be no reason to get notes because it actually would be an unauthorized request. So we're just putting that request right in there so we make sure that they're logged in. Okay, now we should show those notes on the page. Let's do it. Let's have like a section right here. Let's give this a class of row. We're using Bootstrap. Let's say like margin top 3, and then we want to add a bunch of little cards. So if we look at Bootswatch, these are our options. What should we do?
Let's do one of the. Let's do a blue one.
Just like this?
Yeah.
Okay. So I was going to mention, like, to me, it's like the white is almost a little bit too hard to read, but you're actually colorblind. So is there a pretty good, is there a good like contrast between the white and the blue here for you?
Yeah, it's decent. But I mean, if like let's use the one on the right.
This one?
Yeah, let's just use that one.
Okay, because it has like a blue outline.
Yeah.
How do I get the contents of this?
See, that's another thing for me is like the smaller a color is next to something else, like it's very difficult for me to see.
What do you mean smaller?
So like, for example, like the outline of something is very small, so it's not like enough of that color to really have like contrast against something else. So like, for example, I have a problem sometimes if something's like written in red ink on white paper.
Okay.
Because if it's like a dark enough red, I don't really notice it at first.
It just like blends in with the paper almost?
Well, it's just like I view it as just like dark ink on white paper, and it's like
you don't know that it's red.
Right. So like a problem that I'll really have sometimes is like if I'm looking at something in like Photoshop and it's like a tiny little color square and it doesn't have any sort of like hex value or anything next to it, I'm like, what is it?
Super interesting. Okay, so we grabbed that thing, and basically we want to show those here. And
I think we can get rid of the info card title.
Yeah. So definitely. So basically, we want to repeat this card for every note in the notes array. So let's do this. right there, do a v4. So do a v-4. And it's going to be equal to note in notes. Well, with a space, yeah, note space in notes. And right now this is complaining because we need to set a key. So because we got this data from an API, there actually is a key on each note. So we'll say key we'll bind it to note._ID because each note is going to have a unique ID. And then on the header, we want to show the note title. So in Vue, how do we show the value of something inside of an element? You got it, Tony. It's a little too many, but yes, handlebars. That, cool. And so we want to show the title right there. What should we do? Note.title. Beautiful. And then right here, let me go ahead and I'll select it for you because I may have issues with that. But right there in the paragraph, we actually want to show the note's contents. It's just note.note. Yeah, exactly. Cool. Let's see what happens. I mean, I think this should work. Yeah, look at that. We got all.
Whoa!
So one thing I want to do is bring in a Markdown library and like actually stylize this stuff. But I guess the other thing is we can use their grid system to show like 3 cards across or something like that.
Okay. I'm gonna run to the restroom real quick while you do the Markdown thing.
Yeah, go for it. So I'm gonna give this a column-4. This should give us 3 columns across. Yeah. I guess the only thing about that though is notice how the headers are like weird. So I think I'm actually gonna wrap this whole thing in a div and make that the column. So I'll have a div. This will have a class of column4. And this will actually be the thing that we repeat. And then the card is going to go inside of that. Like so. There we go. Awesome. While Tony is away, does anyone have any questions or comments in the chat? Let's check some boxes in the README. So when we're creating notes, we're actually setting the logged in user's ID on the note. We can get all notes. You have to be logged in to get the notes. Logged in users can see all of their notes. So we're actually querying the database to grab only the notes with the given user's user ID. And right now we are listing all of the notes on the client. But one thing I want to do is basically take the contents here and show it as the actual Markdown text. So for that, there's quite a few libraries out there. I don't know if anyone watching, do you have like a recommended Markdown parsing library? The one that I know about is Marked. It's fairly easy to use, but I know there are a few others out there. Because this will actually, I think it can parse in like GitHub flavored Markdown as well. Options. Yeah, GFM. So it actually defaults to GitHub flavored Markdown. I wonder, does it support emojis? Markdown renderer with emoji codes. Hey, Sean, welcome to the stream. Tony is actually taking a quick break. Emoji syntax plugin for Markdown it. So Markdown it is another Markdown parser. I'm curious how it is versus marked. Let's look at marked on GitHub. Yeah, so marked has 17,000 stars. Markdown it has 5,800 stars. Yeah, Simjon is mentioning they've used a Markdown it for all their projects. It looks pretty nice. And we could add the emoji support, so that'd be cool. But M is asking, so what we've done from scratch can be accomplished with something like Passport and Passport Local, right? In a way. The things you would still have to do with Passport and Passport Local, or I mean, actually, a lot of what we've done you would still have to do with Passport and Passport Local. So it would... come built in with a middleware for is logged in. There's definitely that. You would have to add another Passport plugin called Bearer token that automatically does these things. So it actually takes the token. Technically, you would have to implement verifying the token, so you would still have to do token verification. If we look in the routes, you would still, basically the code where we're searching the database and hashing the password and inserting into the database, you would still have to write that, even with something like a Passport local and like validation. Really, the only thing it does for you that we've done is the middlewares, and then yeah, like making sure that a user is logged in. But for the most part, a lot of what we've done here, you still have to do. One of the added benefits of using something like Passport instead is if you already have local auth hooked up to Passport, then it's that much easier to go ahead and add in like OAuth with Google or Facebook or Twitter to your app on top of having local login. And yeah, Merchon, I can see your, I see that message. I saw a previous message. Actually, did I say hello earlier? I may not. Hello, Merchon. I may have missed the hello message. And hey, Tony, welcome back. Cool. Tony, someone had just asked, like, if we were to use something like Passport, how much of this would we still have to do ourselves? And the answer is like quite a bit.
What's Passport?
So Passport is a library for adding like Auth to your Express app, Passport.js. One of the things that I use them for and that they're really good at is like social auth. So in strategies, they have Facebook, Twitter, Google. But I mentioned if you wanted to use JSON Web Tokens, they also have this HTTP bearer strategy. And this automatically grabs the token out of the header. So basically, we wrote that from scratch here to like grab the header, get the token after bearer. This strategy would do that for you, but then you would still need to take that token and verify it with JSON Web Token. So you'd still need to do that even if you're using this Passport strategy.
Okay.
Cool. Yes, so there are two libraries that we found. So I've used Marked before. It has like a ton of stars on GitHub. And basically you give it some Markdown and it will give you back some HTML. And then there's also Markdownit. But it looks like Markdownit has a plugin for emojis. Yeah, so like if you do like emoji characters, they automatically get rendered. I don't know, Tony. Which should we use, Markdownit or Marked? So this is Markdownit, and then let's look at like examples, demo page, and this is Marked.
Let's just use the Markdownit.
Markdownit. Okay, we're gonna go with it. Let's look at their GitHub for how to install it. We should be able to npm install it and like import it in. Yeah. Okay. So we're going to be doing this on the client because on the client we're going to get access to, this is where we have the Markdown, and on the client we'll render it and actually like show it rendered there. So in our client folder, let's install this package. So Tony, do an npm install of markdown-it. Go. Awesome. So that got installed, and then they tell us how to use it. So we can bring it in. So for us, we can import it in because we are using Babel. Create a Markdown renderer, and then render the contents. Node.js, the same, but with sugar. We'll do it this way. Okay, so basically in our dashboard component, we're going to need to import in that library. So let's say import Markdown it from markdown-it. In quotes, markdown-it. Yep. And we don't have to, but in their documentation, they capitalize the M in Markdown and the I in it. So we'll do that. And then we'll actually just go ahead and create an instance of Markdown it to be used elsewhere. And basically we say md.render and then pass in the Markdown string that we want to render. So let's do this. We will have a method on our component called render Markdown. Let's do it right here. So create a method called render Markdown. And then this will be a function, so it's going to be a method. It's going to take in the note. So as a parameter, put note. Yes, like that. And basically, we'll want to return md.render with the contents of the note. But Simjon in the chat does mention we'll need to add Markdown it emoji. Let's go ahead and do that as well. Markdown. Let's see how to use it. I think we need to add it to the options.
Yeah, it's right there under emoji.
Oh yeah, so we just do md.use and pass in emoji. Yeah, it's simple enough. Cool. So we'll just install this Markdown it emoji. And then we'll also import that in. Let's say md emoji from there. And then we'll say md.use. It's kind of like a middleware, isn't it? But not really. So use emoji, and then from then on, it should be able to use emojis. Okay, easy enough. And yeah, now we have this render Markdown function. So let's actually use it. So right now, let's just do this. We're going to have to change this, but right there, let's call render Markdown and pass in note.note. So say render Markdown. And then invoke it with note.note. Cool. And let's see what happens. Hey, something's happening. So notice how it took our Markdown code and actually turned it into HTML. Pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
But that's not what we want. So we actually want this HTML to like render on the page. So for that, we can use, I believe it's v-html. So it's a custom Vue.js directive to safely set the inner HTML as some expression. So v-html, and then we'll set that to render Markdown. And that will actually render it out. Look at that.
That looks really good.
Doesn't it? Nosebleed level 5. And actually, I want our headers, like div class header, I want this to be bigger. Can we make this an H1? I mean, we technically should make it like an H2. Let's take a quick break. Yeah. Let's do two per row, because right now I'm doing column 4. Let's do column 6, so it's like 2 notes per row. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. And actually, one thing is though, we're not storing the date that the note was created. I don't know how important that is, but we might want to like actually show these in the date in order they were created.
Put that in the README thing for this, and just like put like
in the stretch.
Yeah, stretch.
So let's say store date of note in DB and sort notes by date created. Cool. Awesome. But check this out, Tony. So go ahead and add a new note. Wait, isn't that the one of your last? Okay, never mind. Okay.
No, it's a new note.
And also, let's test out the emoji codes. So and also like Markdown rendering. So like do some headers, do some lists. Let's also like embed an image too.
Okay. Yeah. So nosebleed level 6.
Has it increased?
Yeah, of course. And let's actually get like an image of the nosebleed from Doom.
Yeah, and actually, so Arif has a comment. So if I write some script in Notes, I can change everything? Actually, no. So Markdown it, I believe, has a built-in sanitization to remove any scripts, and then also VHTML prevents you from specifying scripts inside of it. So good try, but no.
All right. So what are we doing is hold on. So I'm looking at the Markdown it thing. So
yeah. So if you want to add an image.
So.
Well, actually, you can just do it as like this, and then the URL of your image goes right there.
Okay, let's find an image of the Doom bleeding nose face. Just Doom bleeding nose or bleeding face.
This is. Wait, I'm gonna hide my screen. This could potentially be.
Really? Yeah, it could be bad.
Which one, Tony? Oh, I can't hear you anymore. Move the mouse to point, Tony. That one? Okay. Cool. Oh, okay. It's not that graphic. I forgot to hide it, but yeah, it's fine. I think we should be able to hear you now, Tony.
Okay. Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay.
That's absolutely perfect.
And let's do some emojis. I think I can do like smile.
Oh, where's the emoji with the like the bandage on the face?
Let's do emoji search. Emoji code search. Unicode party. Bandage.
There you go. So sad.
Well, I think did it copy the actual emoji? I want the emoji. Yeah, I want the emoji code, like the name of the emoji.
Yeah, because like that's what actually is going to render down.
Exactly. So if that emoji plugin is working, it should render it. Bandage.
Plus, with the actual code itself, it'll work on different browsers.
Yeah, I mean technically the Unicode would work too.
Oh.
Why can't I find emoji codes? Emoji.
We should be able to see the emoji in like under Emojipedia.
This is the one.
Bandage.
Oh no. Oh wait, maybe it is. Full emoji list. Okay, GitHub emoji list. There we go. This is what I'm looking for. There's no bandage. Head.
Well, it's like one of the last head ones.
Let's see. It may not actually be supported as a code.
Oh.
Maybe we just do cry.
No. Sob.
Sob. Okay, yeah. Hard.
That's my favorite one.
So let's just put a bunch of sobs there.
Okay, and we'll make it as a note.
Are you ready? Yeah, click it.
Yeah.
We'll click add note. Oh, yeah. Okay, and it should show up. Ah, look at that. Oh, and it works. Sweet. We can actually add some styling in though. So like right now the image is like gigantic. Let's just do some default styling. Let's say any image inside of card text should be 100% width. Nice. Cool. And actually, let's try what Arif mentioned. So if we put a script in here, have we introduced some sort of cross-site scripting vulnerability? So title, hello world, and then let's add a script. And we're just going to do an alert pwned. And let's also do the middle finger emoji. Wait, is that not supported? The thing is, I think, oh, there it is, FU. That's funny. Yeah, and so notice, and so this is either Vue.js is doing this or Markdown it is doing it, but basically it sanitizes it to not actually add the script to the page, so it only adds the text contents of the script. Cool. One minor styling thing. Let's make these cards 100% width, height. Should be able to do class card. Yeah, look at that. But at the same time, let's do like margin bottom of like 1em. That won't work. Let's do height 90%. There we go.
Look at that.
Very nice. Yeah, so now all the cards are the same height. We did it!
End stream.
No, I mean, I think it's a good place to end. There are things we want to add. I will mention, like, there's a lot of stretch. So this episode, the beginning of it was all about middlewares and, like, making sure a user is logged in. But there's a lot more we can do with Auth. The end of it was more of just, like, we're just building, like, a simple little app, but we're logged in. But actually, we should demo that this is working. So if I log in as a different user, I'm not going to see these notes because these are only for final Newb. So let's log out of final Newb and log in as Newb4. Passwords are cool. Log in. Unable to log in.
So just make a new account.
I guess I could. So that's one of the stretch features is a password reset and like email verification. Passwords are, wait, let's try again. Passwords are cool. Oh, okay, I'll have to create a new account. Mr. CJ. Sign up. Cool. And notice, when CJ is logged in, he doesn't see any notes because he doesn't have any with his user ID. So if I add hello world, let's add a nice little wave right there. This is my first note. This is cool. I like this. Yay.
And so if you were to log in back as final Newb, you just see all the
yeah, so Mr. CJ, he sees this one, but if we log out and we log in as final Newb, do you remember what is the password?
Passwords are cool.
Passwords are cool. And so if we log in as final Newb, he sees his things, but he doesn't see the other things. So we've done it.
I was just thinking, like, I think Newb4 was like, you filthy peasants or something.
Oh, yeah. We could watch the last video and figure out what the password was. Arif says, congrats. Thanks a lot. John says, golf clap. Sweet. So yeah, it's working. That's awesome. And the thing about it is, like, typically... So in one of the stretches we have is you can view a user's profile. So like, let's say right now all of the notes are public by default, but then you have an option to make a note private by default, and you have an option to make a note public, and then you could go to like user/6 or user/username, and that will show you all of that user's public notes. So we could make it to where certain things are still accessible, but other things aren't. We didn't add deleting or editing notes, but right now, because all of those are behind the authorization middleware, technically we would still need to do some validation when you're deleting or editing. Like you would look that note up in the database, and then when you got it back, you would want to make sure that user ID is the currently logged in user's ID, and if it is, you would allow them to edit it or allow them to delete it, and if it's not, you send back an unauthorized error. All of those things for Stretch. I think the next episode of Newb Quest is going to be something else. We've done this for 5 episodes now, so we're going to do something else, but we have lots of things to come back to. User profiles, public notes, but then also we could create an admin account and be able to see all of the users in the system and be able to like deactivate or delete users. We could create a super user that could literally see anyone's profile and anyone's notes. We could add rate limiting to prevent people from trying to log in many different times with different passwords to try and just guess a password. We could lock out an account after someone tries to log in like 5 times. We could add a password strength meter. We could do a reCAPTCHA for signing up or logging in. We could add tests. I believe there was a comment. I didn't get to reply to it, but they mentioned password reset with email. And also like something else we could do in Stretch is like forgot password email. Well, we could do like reset with email. We could do like reset by answering security questions. Yeah. Cool. And Gifted Finger says, hello from Michigan. Hey, what's up? Question from Michael. What's the best way to put both the client and server folders on the same Heroku instance? Trying now, but it's kind of tricky. Yeah, the main issue with that is Vue.js needs to be built before it's served. So you would actually need to have like a post deploy script that builds your client, and then you would need to add a static serve route in Express. And also, Heroku wants your package JSON to be in there. So it's tricky. So the way we've set this up would be very tricky to deploy with Heroku. It's possible. It's definitely possible. But tricky. Actually, let me make a list for you of things you'd need to do to deploy this. Deploy everything to the same Heroku instance. And Tony, did you have any other questions, or do you need to go, or what's on your mind, man?
I'm just trying to think of stuff we could do for next time, but I mean, other than that, like I don't really have to go. But
okay, yeah, hang around. We'll keep chatting. Okay, to deploy everything to the same Heroku instance, first we would need to move the server package.json to the root of the folder, and then update it, because Heroku will look at the root for a package JSON. If it doesn't find one, it doesn't know what to do with it. So you would want to move that up. Then your start script would need to change. So then update start script for server to be a relative path. Quick stretch. And I'll finish this, but John says, CJ, thank you so much for this. Really helped me out. Very welcome. And he also says we should also give Tony a round of applause.
I need the air horns.
Okay, so update start script for server to be a relative path. Like once you move this package JSON out, the start script would be server/index.js. Have a post deploy script to server that will build Vue.js And then you would also need to add a static serve to the server that serves, in this case it would be go up one directory into the client and then the dist folder, which is what Vue.js creates whenever it builds it. There are quite a few steps to deploy this thing. So the other thing is you need environment variables for the DB connection and token secret. So right now our DB has a hard-coded like connecting to localhost. You would need to update this to point to an environment variable, which is the MongoDB you created on Heroku. And then the other thing is we also have this token secret here, which is used for signing and verifying the token. You would need to make sure that in your Heroku dashboard you create that token. And I think that's it. It's quite a bit of things, but I'll push this README up to GitHub. Give these things a try. Shoot me a message on the Discord if you have any questions or issues with deploying it. And note from Jiraj, reactive coding challenge. Let A equals 1, let B equal 2, let sum equal A plus B, and A equals 10. Oh, that actually sounds really fun. Let me push this up, and I think as an episode ender, why not? I'll do that. Where are we? Oh no. Go up one directory. Update README and render notes as Markdown. Cool. So if you click the link in the description, all of the code we wrote is up there. If you want to try to deploy to Heroku, here's this. If you deploy to 2 separate servers, it's going to be a little bit easier. So you would build your client, deploy the dist folder. One last thing to add though. Update calls in client from localhost 5000 to be like herokuapp.com. And a super chat from Michael Thompson. Thank you for the answer. Right? You're very welcome. Like I said, it's quite a few steps, but feel free to reach out and I'll help you out later. Your app. Cool. All right. Anything else, Tony?
Hopefully by next time we're gonna have a little logo.
Oh yeah.
A little JavaScript night on his Newb quest.
Yeah, so Tony he does graphic design and has come up with some like sketches for like a little Newb quest guy. He's like a knight. There's like a CSS wizard. I think we're gonna try to come up with like a new intro sequence and like a theme song. It's gonna be cool.
Yeah, I don't know what I want to use for HTML. Like I was thinking about making him like a little troll or something. Like I don't want to make him a knight.
Yeah.
Because it's like there's like the joke that HTML isn't a language, but I'm trying to think of like some sort of like classic like RPG class that HTML should be. Maybe we should ask the Discord later. We'll try to figure out like a different thing, because I figure HTML, CSS, and then maybe occasionally we have like a Vue.js is like a little monster or something.
Wait, why is Vue a monster? Vue should be a princess. It's a beautiful thing.
Vue, okay. Maybe that'd be like a thing. Like Vue, there's like a little tower, and it's like it says like Vue.js. React should definitely be a monster. Like React is like some demon thing. I don't know. Okay.
Now, I don't know if I actually want to do this challenge. Let me write it out and see if I can like think about how I might do it. And if not, I'll leave it as an exercise for the viewer, courtesy of Jiraj, and maybe on next week's Code Katas we can check out this challenge. But in the chat, this is what Jiraj has recommended. By the way, Auth is done. We did it for the most part. It was super fun. And as I mentioned, there's stretch features, there's all kinds of things we could add to it. But for now, we're going to call it quits on that and start working on other things. But we will be back every now and then to do certain things. John, with a $10 donation, you rock. Appreciate it. Thanks so much. Awesome. You all are too kind. Too kind. Okay, let's save this as a JavaScript file. So this is Jiraj's question. Sean says GG to you, Tony.
Thank you all. Thank you all.
GG. Okay. So let A equal 1, let B equal 2, and let sum equal A plus B. And then if we set A is equal to 10, and we log the sum, we actually should get 12, not 3. So this should log 12. And if you're familiar with the basics of JavaScript, this expression would run and store the value 3 in sum, and then assigning 10 to the value A would have no effect on sum. So like in regular JavaScript, this actually logs 3, but the challenge is make this log 12. And then your code to make this happen should be above these lines, and it must work for any changed values. So here, does this make sense, Tony? Like why this is a challenge?
Because you're essentially trying to like change the value of something.
Well, so be the JavaScript engine. What is going to log, like right now, like basic JavaScript rules, what's going to log to the console right here?
It's going to be sum, which is 1 plus 2 right now.
What is that?
3.
Exactly. So it logs 3, but what we want to do is we want to make sum basically dependent on A and B. So if A or B ever change, sum changes too also. So like if we ran this code right now, 3, but we actually want that to log 12.
So do we have to change the value of A?
We are. So we're setting A to 10 there. But the idea is just by writing this one line of code, A equals 10, sum automatically updates to 12.
All right, we're already at no speed level 10, so.
Okay. Meritchan is saying, actually, dynamic programming refers to the programming paradigm which works by the divide and conquer technique. I would agree. This is more like reactive programming than dynamic programming. Sorry. Was I saying dynamic? I didn't mean dynamic. I should have said reactive. Yeah, reactive coding challenge. The thing is, I could do this. The way I'm thinking about it is like I could do this if like A and B and sum were on an object. Now actually, let's see. Can I proxy global variables? So like so in Node, if I'm not in strict mode, what is this? This is an empty object. And like down here, this is still an empty object. Oh, can I proxy global though? And there's global.a and global.sum. Do they have values? No, because they're not global variables. Can I get access to the scope of a module in Node.js? I don't know. Yeah, and Jiraj is mentioning that's how Vue.js works under the hood. Yeah, so I've actually, I attended a workshop with Evan Yu where we implemented reactivity from scratch. But we did it on objects. And I know how to do that because you can use like define property where you actually can detect when something is changing. And then if it changes, anything that's dependent on it can change too. To me, it just seems tricky to do it with like just bare variables without doing some weird things. Okay, but let's say this is a challenge to the user. And actually, Jiraj, do you have an answer to this? Like, is this doable the way it is right now without any other things? Like, could I actually write code here on line 2 to make this work? Let me know. Because right now I can't think about how to do it on just like bare things. Yeah, so I could do getters and setters and proxies, but how do you do that in the local scope of a Node.js file? Like I could do it on an object. That's what I was thinking. Let me just do some Googling real quick. Node.js module scope variable. And M says, thanks so much, CJ, for this series on Auth. It helped me out a lot. Greetings from Austria. Fantastic. Oh, quick plug. So if you are watching out there somewhere in the world, a couple episodes back, I made this guest map. It's got to load the pins real quick. But basically, wherever you are in the world, you can leave me a message with a pin on the map as to where you are. I think it's loading. Yeah, there they are. So lots of people have left me messages so far, which is pretty cool. So yeah, leave me a message on the map. I can see where you are.
No love for Antarctica.
Yeah, there's no one watching my stream in Antarctica.
Those penguins.
Yeah. And yeah, so there have been a few questions. I think I missed it, but is there a set time that you stream live? So the Newb Quest streams have been happening at like 1 p.m. Saturday or 1 p.m. Sunday. I used to have a set schedule, but now it's really up in the air because I don't have a dedicated place to stream. So like every time I stream, I have to set up all of my things. Right now, no. In about a month and a half or so, I hope to get back to like 5 streams a week, pretty much one stream a day, around some days at like midday, some days like in the evening. But right now, no set stream. I have been pretty consistent about code katas on Wednesday. So if you check out my YouTube channel, Coding Garden with CJ. Yeah, this past week I didn't do code katas because I was exhausted. It's for right now it's just a pain because I have to find a room, I have to set up all my streaming equipment, but this Wednesday, I hope to do code katas. That pretty much happens every Wednesday. So, yeah. Is that West Coast? So I'm actually on the East Coast time. GMT -4. Let's see. Are there any new dots on? Oh, look at all this. I think there's some new dots that popped up. Cool. And so Jiraj is mentioning the best explanation of JavaScript reactivity. That's where we can find the answer to that question. It's an article on Medium. Cool. So it's from Greg Pollock. Yeah, he runs Vue Mastery. Yeah, totally. I see. So you basically have a function that is inside of the function is where you're modifying sum. So that's where you put the modification to sum. And then because you called dep.depend right here, anything it was dependent on, whenever they change, this function would rerun. Cool. Cool. But yeah, check out this article. And also check out Vue Mastery. They have ton of really good, really well-made intro to Vue videos. So you can see intro to Vue.js. I believe all of these videos are free. They have really cool animations and stuff like that. And then their more advanced course, which actually gets into like reactivity of Vue.js. Well, actually, build a reactivity system is free. But they show how to do that from scratch, which is pretty cool. Okay, I think we're gonna call it there, Tony. Are you still with me?
Yes.
Cool. Yeah, I think we're gonna call it there. It was a fun time. Thanks absolutely everyone for tuning in. Just right before I go, I do want to give a shout out to everyone that donated while we were live. Let me pull up that info real quick. Okay, shout out to Simjohn with the $2 pledge on Patreon. Really appreciate it. Shout out to Michael Thompson, says thanks for the answer, $5 donation. And shout out to John Stoll with a $10 donation. He says, you rock. Really appreciate it. Okay, but we've done it. Newb Quest, Auth from scratch. Lots more things we could do. It was a fun time. Any final words from you, Tony?
Not much. Thanks everybody for watching.
Yeah, it was a good time. And next week, I have no idea what we're going to do, but it'll be good. It'll involve emojis, probably.
Definitely.
All right. There's Dash Tree, says, hi, CJ. Hello, Dash. We're actually on our way out, but thanks for tuning in. Yeah, so wherever you are in the world, have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, or night. I'll see you next time, and I will leave you with this.